As usual, we speak on the Pasha and basically on the Rebbe's Sichos, and then we try to relate ourselves to that which we find in the Sichos. Today's Pasha speaks a lot about the man. The man, even though the man per se came down, in the Torah talks about it in Pasha B'Shalach, but in today's Pasha there are certain points that we learn specifically from today's Pasha that is not mentioned, not indicated in other Pashas. That is, where I don't know if you got up to this yet. There was even when we're journeying, traveling through the Midbar, through the desert, and as it were to happen, they started complaining. And once you complain, you don't stop at anything. Such as complaining about the man. The man, it's very difficult to find something to complain about. Food coming down from heaven, right there outside of your tent. All you have to go to do is just collect it, and this is what happened. And then the Torah describes what was the process of the man. And in describing the process, what he did with the man, in commenting on the various things mentioned in the Torah, the Gemara says that these things actually, these particular activities, are actually referring to different types of people. By tzaddikim, by them, the man, the way it came down from heaven, this is the way they consumed it. It was ready to be eaten. By Beinanim, by people of a lesser madrega, they had to actually cook it. They couldn't eat it the way it came down from the heaven. They had to cook it. Then there is a third category, which you could call the third and the least category, but they actually had to grind it down first. Same process, similar process as you would use on grain coming out of the ground.
Okay, so this is like 3 steps to man?
This is 3 steps in the man, but the Gemara says that these are not 3 steps. That the Torah is not talking about 3 steps universally. It's talking about 3 different categories of people.
Oh wait, so what's the 3 steps again of the man?
Some had to actually grind it.
Oh, yeah.
Some didn't have to grind it, but they had to cook it.
Oh.
Some needed neither one. They would just eat it directly as it came down.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the man is called in the Torah Lechem min hashomayim. Just like we make a bracha Lechem min ha'aretz, the man is Lechem min hashomayim, bread from the heaven. Heavenly bread, which represents, so to speak, a heavenly quality, a godly quality, not an earthly quality. And even so, this heavenly bread came down to madrigas, to lower madrigas, such that even what we call Rishoyim, or the lowest level of people, were also able to benefit from them, but they had to grind it down and cook it, and then they could eat it. Despite the fact that they had to do all that process, it remained lechem min hashomayim. It still had its particular qualities. It still refined the people who ate it. And as it says that the man, despite the fact that it was food, it did not have any refuse. It did not have any soilus. Everything that was eaten was absorbed right there into the bloodstream. Everything was nutrient. So that even the lower people, the people who did not see in the man such a spiritual food, they saw it saw it from a physical level, that they grind it and cook it and so forth. Even they, nevertheless, experienced the element of lechem min hashamayim, bread from heaven, and clearly it had a profound effect on them, and had elevated them. So based on this Gemara, the Rebbe points out that everything that occurs in the world is actually present in Torah. In Torah itself there is also what one would call lechem min ha'oretz and lechem min hashomayim. Lechem min ha'oretz in Torah, generally speaking, that would refer to Nigla de Torah, to the Nigla, to the revealed part of Torah. We will discuss it in a minute. And Lechem min hashomayim refers to the Pnimis Torah, Chassidus. Lechem min ha'oretz and Nigla de Torah, the only way to learn Nigla is through hard labor. You have to take, you're all learning Nigla to one extent or another. You take a certain concept, a certain principle, a halacha, and you understand it by comparing it to other halachas, and by having a lot of kashas, a lot of questions, a lot of contradictions, by weaving through all the various difficulties in ascertaining the halacha, that's when you come to the halacha, to the conclusion. This is similar to lechem min ha'oretz, where you take grain from the ground. The ground doesn't even produce grain, it produces stalks. When you look at the stalk externally, you don't even see it as food. You see grass. But then if you pick up the grass and you break it open, you see that inside there's a kernel. This kernel also has a shell on it. And until you break the shell, you don't realize that there is edible flour in it. It looks like this is just a hard kernel. You break down the kernel, the shell, then you see that there is flour in it. And then when you grind down that flour, and you sift it through, it becomes fine flour. And then first you have to mix it with water and knead it and bake it, and then it's edible. Then it becomes edible to the human being, pleasant and healthy and so forth. This is the labor process in producing food, edible food, from lechem min haaretz. And this is similar in Torah. This is how it is in Torah and Migla, that everything that one learns at first is a complete mystery. But then you start breaking it down and opening up what's the reason behind this, what's the reason behind that, and eventually it becomes refined, and eventually you're able to absorb it and really relate to it and understand it. Then there is Pnimiyus HaTorah, as you learned in Chassidus, where in Pnimiyus HaTorah you don't encounter what we call kashas, contradictions, because there aren't any. Pnimiyus HaTorah is something just like the man came straight from heaven. Pnimiyus HaTorah comes straight from, we'll discuss this more at length, straight from a pure source. That which comes from the earth becomes earthly. And in order to take an earthly object, an earthly element, and make it edible to a human being, it takes a long process. Whereas lechem min hashamayim is heavenly. And that is directly ready for human consumption. You can directly relate to it. This is the lechem min hashamayim. The Rebbe is pointing out.
Wait, so there's no, it's like everything's straight over there? So there's no Yigia in order to be able to get it, you're saying?
There's no Yigia, right. There's Yigia for you to personally understand it, but the inyan that you're learning comes straight. It's like straight min hashamayim. It's like eating directly as it comes down. You don't have to sift it through to get to the point, to the truth. And the Rebbe points out, based again on this Gemara, that the man was something which was partaken by both tzaddikim, beinim, and rishoyim in different ways, but nevertheless they all partook on it, and they all benefited from it. And the same is true regarding lechem min hashamayim in Torah, Pnimiyus HaTorah, that this is also something which is really applicable to every person. There are people who are much higher than others. Nevertheless, even at the lowest level, he is able to learn Pnimiyus HaTorah and benefit from it. Perhaps not at the same level as somebody more refined, but nevertheless, everybody can benefit from it. Everybody can relate to it. And therefore, the Rebbe is urging in this Sikha that we should make sure that everybody learns Chassidus regardless of what their status and level is. Now, I want to discuss, in line with this general concept, I want to discuss the principle of lechem min haaretz and lechem min hashamayim. And the one question that I'd like to examine is, what difference does it make whether this is lechem min haaretz or lechem min hashamayim? When you take a kernel, you grind it down, and you sift it through and you bake it. Our bracha is lechem min haaretz. Lechem is, we're not eating earth, we're eating lechem, bread. So what is so significant in mentioning that this is lechem min haaretz? And this is really in every bracha that we make. When we make a bracha on the fruit, we say pri ha'etz. The source of it, the eitz, and the eitz grows from the ground. We're tracing it back to its source, to the earthly source. what is so significant about that?
All right, so what's the question again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
So what's the question?
The question is, what is the significance of saying that this is bread from the earth? I'm eating it, we're eating as bread, not as earth. So we say, Hashem created bread. That's the important thing. What is min ha'oretz? What is so significant about mentioning that it is from the earth? And then in contrast to that, we say lechem min hashamayim. A similar thing, except there is min hashamayim. At least we can hear that hashamayim. Oh, that's something special. But even there is a question: what's the difference? The Rebbe gave us food, give us lechem, lechem min ha'oretz, lechem min hashamayim. What's the emphasis? The explanation for this is that the earth contains inherent and secret, hidden powers, hidden capabilities. There is a Baal Shem Tov says on the Pasuk, Yishihu Atam Eretz Chayfetz. I'm not going to go in long length. The Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov says like this regarding the earth, that all the scientists in the world, all the Wissenschaftler, like the Chachomim that study the nature, will never fathom. Fathom means going to the bottom, going to the end of understanding what is contained in the earth, of the secret of the deep qualities, deep koiches, forces, powers that God had imbued in the earth.
So Yom Yom from Agorot.
From Lag Baiman.
Erev Lag Baiman.
Yeah. Then it talks about the Eden and yeah. The earth possesses, as is explained in Tanya, it appears to us just to be a blob of earth, of stone, a rock. The earth possesses capabilities that are completely beyond human comprehension. And the earth can produce the vegetation. And then this vegetation supports all life in the world, whether it's animal or mahavdal human beings. Everything lives from the earth indefinitely. It's never exhausted. Its capabilities it can never be exhausted. What is okay? So therefore, when we say Amitel Lechem Min Ha'aretz, to produce food from the ground, it's a very significant statement. Because being that this is food from the ground, it carries in it the effect of the power of the ground, of the earth. And the nourishment that we gain from the food, we may not even recognize it. But a part of it is the fact that it's from the earth. It carries it to the power of the earth. The food is not just the vitamins and the minerals. It is the fact that it came from the earth that is of great significance.
Again, why?
Hmm?
That's why it's so significant that like came from Earth.
That it carries in it
So what's so special about the Earth?
the earth we just explained.
I know, I missed it.
Right. Right?
Yeah, no, I just missed it. I missed
Oh,
the
you
whole
missed it.
explanation for why.
Oh, the earth, we can talk about it. I didn't
Right.
finish it yet.
Oh,
But the earth, you already know that the earth has koiches that are beyond limit. And these koiches of the earth are inherent in the food that's produced from the earth. And therefore, lechem min ha'oretz is very significant. The real strength and health that one gets is not just from the food, from the minerals and the vitamins. It is from the fact that it came from the earth. There's a phenomenal point made in the Likutei Torah, or in Torah someplace. What he says that the fact that all the animals reproduce, and therefore they have the ability of eternity. Eternity is a godly element. So the fact that the human being, a Yid, has eternity is because he has an eternal soul. Animals do not have inherently, natural, the principle of eternity. How is it that animals also have, through reproduction, the union of eternity? So the Alter Rebbe says in Ter'er, because they eat from the earth, and the earth has the eternal quality, that gives them the eternal power. That gives them a sense of an element of eternity. This is how powerful this whole process is. Lechem min ha'oretz. I'm sorry?
The fact that the animals also eat earth?
Yeah,
That's
right. You asked if
I'm saying so that's proof that we see how many stuff in the
no. And it's two separate things. I'm explaining what the power of the earth is. And as I explained, that one of the things that is said regarding the earth, that the earth has such a profound effect on animals, because animals also eat from the earth, the grass or whatever it is. If animals that eat other animals, so these animals eat from the earth. The earth has to be the source of everything, and it gives them their power, which is completely beyond their own nature. Because animals do not possess the eternal element, and yet they have this reproduction capability of eternity. That eternity element actually comes from the food that they eat from the earth. Because the earth has an eternal quality to it.
So what you're saying basically is that like the animals only get their eternal quality, which is what? I don't know. But like they only get that through eating the earth. Food from the earth.
That's right.
Okay, so what's this eternal power that the animals have?
They reproduce.
Oh, okay. Why is that? Oh, okay.
It's an eternal part.
Right. Okay.
All right. Just one more point regarding the earth, so that we could have a little bit we can even relate to it. So the Alter Rebbe explains that the earth represents the Midas HaMalchus, Malchus de Atzilus, the end of the whole Seder Ishtalshus is a Malchus, and that is what's represented in the earth. Malchus, very briefly, Malchus contains all the qualities that precede Malchus. This is in the earth, which represents Malchus. The earth has this unlimited quality to it, to the point, as we said before, the earth cannot be exhausted. Cannot be exhausted. It's an interesting phenomenon of our time, because not very long ago, just a few hundred years ago, first I want to tell you that historically, today, you go into a supermarket and there is food galore. I mean, food is just lying there, and you go and pick up what you want. Food was rationed throughout history.
Wait, what was that?
Food was rationed
Ration.
throughout history. The wealthier ones were able to afford, but food in abundance like that there is here is not something which was common not till not very long ago. I remember when Khrushchev from Russia came to visit here. I don't remember which year this was. 1959. Okay. At that time, they were still boasting, the Russian, the communists. So he came in. We took him into a supermarket. He flipped over.
And that was 1959.
That was like,
Today it's like
just around the corner, right?
Well,
Right.
when I was small, it was time you come into the market, you cannot buy sugar. Like you have special coupons,
A coupon.
but only specific amount of sugar.
That's right. And that was only if you stood in line for a whole night, and you're lucky that when you got to the teller, it wasn't empty. Okay.
workers' paradise.
My time.
All right, but this was a stupid Russia. But even in Europe, and it wasn't like this. It wasn't. What is the point? Just a few hundred years ago, people were concerned about the increase, the population increase. People were concerned. In those days, I don't remember how large the world population was.
Maybe 300 million?
Yeah, it was much less than a billion, whatever it is. And I'm concerned, what happens if it increases, if it doubles, where are we going to find food for everybody? This was a real concern. Those wise men of Chalem were really debating, what are we going to do?
Thomas Malthus.
What?
Thomas Malthus.
Ta-
Malthusian stating that population expands exponentially, whereas food only does a geometric
Right,
progression.
okay, I don't know the theory of it. Yeah,
In 1797, I believe.
we're going to be lost. We're going to be lost. Do we realize that today, in order to keep prices at an even keel, food prices, not to flood the market, we take food and drown them in the ocean?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they garbage it.
They absolutely destroy food. Otherwise, the farmer will not be able to produce because he won't make money.
Is that against Torah, Rabbi?
It's not against it.
No?
No, I mean,
I wasn't sure.
they're not taking food away from people's mouths. They're taking food away in order that you should be able to refresh it. So, the the potential that the earth can produce is really limitless. It can support absolutely anything that is demanded of it. You realize today, in comparison to those 200 years ago, today on Al-Hara we have 7 billion people in the world. Can anyone fathom that number? And there's an abundance of food. Abundance. Okay? That is what's represented by the earth. And the important point that we should understand, that when we say, Hamotze lechem min ha'aretz, the significance of this is not just okay, we have food from the earth, thanking Hashem for creating the earth. No. Lechem min ha'aretz is that the lechem relates us to the earth, and it gives us the strength that the earth can provide. Through the bread, we get the strength from the earth. Translate this same concept, what this would mean in lechem min hashomayim. Lechem min hashomayim, similarly, just as in lechem min ha'oretz, when you eat bread, you are aware that this comes from the earth, and it gives you that very special sense and very special strength. Lechem min hashomayim, likewise, is not just that you have this bit of food, but this food connects you and relates you to the Shamayim from where it comes from. And its most effective ingredient, most powerful part of it is the fact that it connects you to the Shamayim and relates you to the Shamayim. So just as by the man, it was called lechem min hashomayim, and the Rebbe brings down in the Sikha that there's days that when they make the bracha on the man, they make the bracha lechem min hashomayim, hamotze lechem min hashomayim, because it's significant that it's min hashomayim, because the shomayim comes along with the lechem. To translate this in terms of the Torah part, lechem min ha'oretz and lechem min hashamayim. So lechem min ha'oretz, when you learn niglu the Torah, learn halacha, it gets you, it brings you closer to understanding the world that you're living in and to seeing the godliness in the world. Because this is lechem min ha'oretz. It explains that everything on earth, let's say, I don't know what you're learning specifically, if there is two people debating, there's a dispute between two people as to who is this article belong to. They both belong into, they have a place, they belong in this world. And because they belong in this world, this is why they have this claim. And when you're adjudicating it on that basis, that in the reality of this world, this belongs to you and this belongs to you. This is not just between two independent people. There's an overall reality that comes along with this dispute. For example, I'll only give you an example. The most famous Mishnah, everybody quotes that because this is something which most children begin to learn Gemara with, is Shnayim Oichazim Betalis. Anybody learn this?
B'mitziyah. Grab hold of the towels.
No, Shnayim Oichazim Betalis. Two people are holding on to a garment, and as they're holding on, they come to court, to Besdin, and they have the dispute. This one says it's mine, this one says it's mine, and so forth. Now, there are all kinds of different things that the questions, how did you get it? But the bottom line, there's an important factor in this. And the important factor is that they're both holding to the garment. There's an emphasis, the fact that they're holding. If the garment were lying on the table, and this one says, this is mine, this one says, this is mine, but their halacha would be totally different. The fact that they are holding, this has a big effect on the whole adjudication of this halacha. What's in the fact that they're holding? If they are claiming this is mine, so they do not relate to the garment the way the garment is in the world. They have a personal claim, but they are holding it, so they become the way the garment is in its presence in the world. They're holding on to it. So therefore, they become part of this whole dispute. Is part of the way the garment is in the world. And that is where the big question is, because they're holding it, and you can't adjudicate because they're both holding. Well, it's real. This garment says I belong to him, and this garment says I belong to him. The garment, it says I belong to him because they're holding it. So lechem min haaretz, actually, in Torah, actually gives us a connection to the reality, to the godly reality of the world. Eventually has a very profound effect on our intellect and our understanding of life in general, and understanding of the God's world that God created. Or right and wrong, true and false, and all kinds of different things. Similarly, when we talk about lechem min hashamayim, we talk about pnimiyus haTorah. Pnimiyus haTorah, likewise, even though we may be learning about certain things, for instance, you'll start learning Tanya right away, and in Tanya he says, right in the beginning, he says there are two nefoshes, there are two souls. Excuse me, pardon me. Every Yid has two souls. Now, this whole concept that every Yid has two souls, where does he get these souls? He gets them from God. He gets them from above. So that this principle that he has two souls is not something which is describing the human being. It is describing the person's connection to the Shomayim, to his Creator. God created the human being, and he created the human being in this way, that he gave each one of them two souls, a godly soul and an animal soul. So that in order to understand this whole concept, that you have a soul and a godly soul and an animal soul, and whatever you learn, everything that we learn in Pnimis HaTorah, in Chassidus, requires one principle before you begin to learn it. That there is God above, where this is all coming from. All understanding of Pnimis HaTorah, of Chassidus, begins not from our understanding it, but from our relating to the Shomayim, to our relating to a godly truth. If not for that, then we would not be able to even begin to learn it. And this I want to elaborate briefly. because unfortunately, many of us, get exposed to all kinds of ideas. In the world, in the scientific world, psychological world, the whole concept of a soul is a pipe dream.
It's a what?
A pipe dream. You know what a pipe dream is? Is mockery.
Ah.
It's a joke. It's a joke. We can't even imagine somebody really thinking, a human being, no soul. But that's how they think. No soul. This is why they come up with all kinds of ideas that a person can live whichever way his fancy directs him. As a matter of fact, they believe that a person actually evolved from a monkey. He evolved from a monkey, he's no different than a monkey. The fact that he walks on two, so that's his advantage.
Do they agree they got an animal soul then if you come from a monkey?
They agree that he has a cockroach soul. You say he's able to crawl around. Nothing. There's no soul. Everything is just a physical structure. It's very difficult to fathom it, but the reason I'm pointing it out is that if you lose sight of Bereshis Bora Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, that God created the world, and that the background for the world is Elokim, is godliness, that there is a Shomayim from where everything feeds from, or everything is based on, just like Lechem in ha'aretz is based on earth, and the Lechem carries the power of the earth. Lechem in hashamayim, the same thing. If you lose chas v'sholom that sense that it is Elokim that is the basis for everything, and all strength, even all life strength, is actually always connected back to Elokim, then there is nothing there. There's no soul. There's nothing to talk about. So that everything that we learn in Hasidus has this structure, that would say. Now there is this particular element, the soul, there's the seichel, there is midos, there's good and bad, there's ava and yira, there are all kinds of different qualities. There's tzedakah, there is a good deed and a bad deed. All that, it's not limited. It cannot be attributed just to the human being. Oh, you did a good thing, you did a bad thing. A good thing relates directly to the source of goodness, to the Shamayim. And a bad thing, God forbid, relates also directly to the Shamayim. And the offense is not just to the person, the offense is the Shamayim. Because that is the source of everything, that's the real thing. The power of a good deed, you learn it all the time in Hasidus, that by doing a good deed, you're mamshich. You heard the word mamshich? Everybody heard the word mamshich. Why mamshich? I did a good deed, it's right here. No. It's like lechem in ha'aretz. Just like lechem in ha'aretz is mamshich, the power of the earth, into the lechem. Lechem in hashamayim is mamshich, the power of the shamayim, into the earth. Here below. So, the beginning, to start with, the whole learning of Pnimi Zatayra is founded and is based on our awareness of the Shomayim, that there is Elohim, which is the beginning, not only the beginning that historically, but this is the power and this for everything that exists that exists. And then furthermore, when we learn about it, and everything that we understand, everything that we learn, everything that we do, good or bad, that relates us back to the Shemayim. That can elevate us and bring strength from the Shemayim, or God forbid, it can offend the Shemayim. And then we have to make corrections, make amends. Just as we pointed out, lechem min ha'oretz gives us strength way beyond the piece of bread that we'll eat. It carries with it the power, the infinite power of the earth itself. Lechem min hashomayim, likewise. When you learn anything in Hasidus, so we try to understand, in fact, what we learn. And we have to absolutely make every attempt to understand it. But the understanding of it must not be to isolate it from its source. Nothing stands on its own. Just like bread exists only because there is oretz. Even after it becomes bread, it's baked and it's finished. We still keep on saying, oh, this is lechem min ha'oretz. Because its greatest resource, and the greatest blessing of it, and the greatest source of strength in this lechem is because it's min ha'oretz. Because it has the earth and power of it. The same thing is in lechem min hashamayim. When we learn Torah, particularly when we learn Hasidus, Hasidus opens up one's mind and heart and makes one, so to speak, excited a little bit and feel good. You have to understand that this feel good is drawing upon the source of this food. The source of this Torah, which is the Elokus. And thus it is most important to understand that whatever we learn in Pnimis HaTorah, in Hasidus, there are two levels at which we are understanding it, we are relating to it. One is on the simple lowest level. Like we said by lechem min hashamayim, they had to also grind it and bake it and cook it. We have to understand the specifics of what we're learning. The good and bad and the midas and seichel and all that, everything has to be understood in its own right. At the same time, one must not lose sight of the truth that all that is not something that stands on its own. Give you an example of seichel, which we speak all the time. Seichel is intelligence. Again, it is important to understand. Intelligence, in today's world, there's a whole confusion. Where people are confused, what's the difference between the human being and lahavel, the animal? They are smart animals. They're smart animals. And they call them intelligent. And we have to understand, there is no intelligence in animals. It doesn't exist. Intelligence is a spark coming directly from the soul, from the human soul. Animals do not possess intelligence. but the animals are smart and so forth. So we have to understand what we mean by intelligence. And we discuss it many times, if one can I'll use the example that many examples I've used, the one example that is most commonly used in our talks. 1 and 1 is 2. Animals can also say that it's 2. In one way or another. I told you there's a story of this little dog that the man would walk around on Eastern Parkway and he would say 2 and 3, and the dog would bark out 5 times. Everybody was standing in awe. Oh, wow, look at this. This dog understands 2 and 3, understands mathematics, right, arithmetic, and he can add things, and understands, 5. Total misunderstanding. It's not true. Not true. The dog did not correlate 2 to 3. The dog barked out 2 times, and then it barked out 3 times. Because we are intelligent, we know that this is 5. The dog didn't know the difference. There's no intelligence in animals. When you say 1 and 1 is 2, in the world, in the physical world, 1 and 1 is 2 is not 2. It's 2 ones. Because each one is not related to the other one. They're 2 separate ones. But you can count 2 ones. For brevity purposes, for convenience purposes, you call them 2 instead of saying 1 and 1. But they essentially remain 1 and 1. Physically, they're 1 and 1. They're not 2. Only in human intelligence does the whole concept exist that it is really 2. It's a unit of 2. And the reason that we have that intelligence is because of our soul. And what our soul tells us? Our soul tells us this one principle. That Breishis, Boro, Lekim, is Hashemayim, V'Zoretz. It's all coming from a Lekim. Because it's all coming from a Lekim, therefore this one and this one have a relationship. That's why they are 2. Because there is an inherent relationship in terms of their source.
All of understanding is based on that premise that everything is coming from the same source?
That's right. All understanding, otherwise there is no intelligence. This is what the Rambam says, and I'm quoting it all the time. The Rambam says, Yisoid ha-Yisoides Amud ha-Chochmes, everybody must have heard it 100 times from me. The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of Chochmah, of wisdom, is Leida, it is to know Sheyesh Shom Motzu Rishin, that there is a first being. Mamtzi Kol Nimtza, who brings forth everything that exists. Without this recognition that there is one single first being that brings everything forth, there is no such thing as intelligence. There's no such thing as relating one thing to another. And the whole counting of 2 is just a convenience. Doesn't change anything. So this is just in contrast to the animal world and to people who do not recognize or were deprived from recognizing the godly truth in the world. But for us, this is the first and primary principle. Whatever we learn, there has to be the cognizance that this is, if it says, Shnai Moiches in Betalis, 2 people are holding on to a talis. This one claims it's mine, this one claims it's mine. And then we have to divide it and they swear, whatever the halacha is. That is a godly principle. It is not just a compromise that the judges make in order to stop these people from fighting. It's a godly principle. That is where all a genuine Torah comes from. And Pnimis Atei in Chassidus, this is most obvious. Because I said, Seichel, what is Seichel? What is intelligent? Intelligence is a flow coming straight from the nefesh, from the soul. Thus, in conclusion, bring it back to us. Learn Chassidus with diligence, learning Torah in general and Chassidus in particular, with diligence. It may seem to be a little tedious, a little difficult. Please understand that everything that you learn immediately connects your seichel to the source of this truth, to the Shomayim. And it opens up a new perspective, a new recognition of this heavenly and godly truth. And what happens if one pursues this learning? Pursues learning with diligence over a period of time, he does not even realize how his whole mind has changed. I know in my class I have, in the city, I have a class with a group of young light. I've been learning for years, and we went through many things, we discussed many difficult issues, and we opened up and Baruch Hashem and understood how things are to be understood from a true perspective, from a godly perspective. The other day we had a visitor, a Fruman Yaman, who is also not stupid at all. He was sitting over there, and he could not fathom out what we were saying, this is not true, this is not so, this is not so. And everybody was laughing at him. You don't know what you're talking about. Because your mind opens up to aware of the Shomayim, without us even realizing to what extent our mind opened up and becomes sensitive to the godly truth. All by learning Nigla and learning Chassidus. So, some should help each one of us, whatever duration of time we have. Remember, every Mishnah learned is another opening into Shomayim as it comes down to Oretz. It's not just I learned this one halach. It's a new opening. Every Perek of Tanya, every line of Tanya, of Chassidus, is an opening to the Shomayim element of Torah. And that is a source of life. That is literally a source of life. So the Rebbe should give each one the strength and success and the appreciation to live, to do this and live with it and bring it down into their lives. With Neighbor Shasir, from the practical side, when they go out to the yeshiva and you start building your own home, you'll have a real resource, the earth and the Shamayim. Cannot be a better resource than that.